Quickly, Minister, because I do think it matters. Did you get the impression that Donald Trump likes Justin Trudeau?
Very much so. Very much so. It was a very cordial. At the end, he walked us to the cars, to the front door of Maralago. He said to the Prime Minister, keep in touch, call me anytime, talk soon. It was a very cordial, warm dinner. As I say, the president at one point with his iPad was controlling the music. He was asking what people wanted to hear in terms of music. It was a very warm, cordial meeting, and I saw very much the mutual respect and warmth between the two leaders.
That, of course, was Dominique LeBlanc, our public safety minister, describing the wonderful friendship that exists between President-elect Donald Trump and our own Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Now, if you believe that little story, I've got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn. But we'll be right back. It's going to be an exciting show.
So we are in a very precarious position in this country. We need political change, but we also need the resolve to resist.
Yes, please like the station. Share this with your friends and family. Thank you for subscribing. So many, almost 1,000 subscribed yesterday. We are having the best week I've ever had on this broadcast. And thanks to all of you. And just a reminder, if you're ordering from the store, the merchandise, please don't use a postal box address. Use a real house or apartment address. And don't worry about Canada Post. The firm we're working with to deliver these T-shirts and hoodies and hats and cups are not using Canada Post. So if that's a question on your mind about Christmas, strike or no strike, the merchandise will get there. There's a couple of folks who still haven't got their merchandise from a week or so ago. We're looking into that and we'll solve the problem. 99% of things are going smoothly. Don't worry about Canada Post. Had to mention that at the beginning here. So we got so many things happening, and I don't know where to start. This, while I was at the gym this morning, got a call about this story here, and I find this just, what do you suppose going on here, folks? Where have we seen this one before? Every time Justin Trudeau needs to find a distraction, he wants to put your attention someplace else, well, there's India. Even though this is the same Justin Trudeau, of course, who said, first of all, accused the Indians of plotting murder and mayhem against Khalistani terrorists. Then he denied he even said it because the Privy Council office came out and said there's no evidence of any wrongdoing by Indian Prime Minister Modi or any of the diplomats here in Canada. So what do you think Justin Trudeau is going to do now? Now, of course, he's running down the Maralago. We talked about this all weekend. And of course, at the beginning, we saw Dominique LeBlanc describe this tender relationship that exists between Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump. And they're just the best of friends. And Donald Trump, of course, just thinks the world of him, even though he's called him two-faced. And he thinks his policies are crap. But they just love each other. But Justin Trudeau needs a distraction right now because Pierre Poilievre, remember the last poll I showed you from last week? Conservatives, 47%. Liberals, 17%, tied with the NDP for second place. 30 points ahead. Conservatives are 30 points ahead in this poll. The bad news polls are 22 points ahead. So, of course, Justin Trudeau needs a little bit of distraction here. And Patrick Brown is the distraction. Yes. Yes. So the Indian government was interfering in Patrick Brown's conservative leadership campaign. Nobody needed to interfere in Patrick Brown's conservative leadership campaign. He was in the basement. 4% support. Now, I was very involved in this campaign. I was writing daily columns at this time for the Western Standard. I openly endorsed Pierre Poilievre because I said he was the only viable candidate. He was the only really, truly conservative candidate. We needed a change from his predecessor. We could not go on with red Tories running the party. Jean Charest was a disaster, another red Tory. Patrick Brown was the guy who was a horrible provincial conservative leader in Ontario that betrayed everybody that he went out, all the grassroots supporters he went out and attracted, he's betrayed them all. Here he was pretending to be this social conservative. And of course, the first thing he did was start going to gay pride parades and sticking everybody's nose in it. And that's why Patrick Brown didn't have a hope in hell. But I have to laugh because, let me see this, my old friend, of course, and I said this at the time, I said, Pierre Poilievre is the only chance the Conservative Party has to stay alive as a party. If they choose another red Tory, the party's dead. This will mean Conservatives will find another party. Obviously, that would have been the People's Party of Canada. But they needed a viable, principled Conservative, and that's why they chose Pierre Poilievre. Now, I have to laugh. Now, they're asking my old friend Michelle Rempel-Garner, who I said at the time publicly, don't support Patrick Brown. It's a really, really stupid thing to do. But of course she did. And she's been trying to run back from it ever since. This is Brown's national campaign co-chair, Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner, allegedly was pressured to withdraw her support for Brown in the 2022 Conservative Party of Canada leadership race. Confidential sources told Radio-Canada. Rempel-Garner categorically denies the allegation. Well, I have no clue if that's the case, but this is much ado about nothing, because Patrick Brown did not have a hope in hell of becoming the leader of the Conservative Party. I don't think he could have won even if Pierre Poilievre wasn't in the race, because he was just so lacking in credibility after his time as the leader of the provincial PC party. And believe me, he was a progressive conservative in every sense of the word. Now, before we get into the two visions for the border, I want to talk about how Pierre Poilievre very cleverly has outsmarted the NDP with their non-confidence. Of course, Jagmeet Singh is only hanging around to get his pension. He's keeping the government alive until he can get his pension. That's all he's up to. It's clear. So one day, I hate Justin Trudeau. The next day, I'm going to support Justin Trudeau. One day, I can see eye to eye with Justin Trudeau on this one. Next day, we're going to vote against this one. Except when the actual vote comes and Jagmeet Singh and his Maserati car and his leather bags and his designer watches, he screws his supporters every time. And of course, his MPs are fed up with him too. Who wouldn't be? So what does Pierre Poilievre do here? I agree with Jagmeet Singh that the Trudeau government is greedy and anti-worker. Now, Jagmeet Singh will have a chance to vote for a non-confidence motion made up entirely of his own words. Will Jagmeet vote yes or no on his own words? And here's the common sense conservative motion. I think this is brilliant. And actually, in church yesterday, one of my very good friends, who's probably watching this right now, reminded me of this because I had completely forgotten Pierre Poilievre had done this. Just so much going on. But Mark, if you're watching right now, thank you very much for reminding me of this during our break in church yesterday. Common sense conservative motion. Whereas the leader of the New Democratic said he ripped up his supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government. Yeah, he said that I don't know how many times. Whereas the Liberal leader said the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for the people. Whereas the NDP leader said the Liberal government will always cave to corporate greed and always step in to make sure the unions have no powers. In response to the Liberal Labour minister's referrals to the Canadian Industrial Relations Board that ordered the workers of Teamsters Canada Rail Conference and the ILWU 514 to resume their duties, violating their right to strike. Therefore, the House agrees with the NDP leader, and the House proclaims it has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and the government. Whoa! That is good politics. I don't know if Pierre thought of that one himself or one of the advisors did, but this is a brilliant plan to make Jagmeet Singh eat his own words. This man, I am so fed up. I think he's even more unprincipled than Justin Trudeau. This is a man who just completely pretends to be a friend of the workers, and he's a bloated corporate lawyer who's got just too much time and money on his hands, and I don't know what he's doing in politics because he really could have found just as much money elsewhere, in the business of law, but no, he wants to feed off the taxpayers, and that's all it comes down to. Now, let us have a look at two views here of the border. Now, Dominic LeBlanc, of course, we'll have on in a minute. He, believe it or not, is still claiming that we need more security at the border, but that's Stephen Harper's fault because Stephen Harper took all of the border security away 9 years ago. And for some reason, they've forgotten to put it back. But it's Stephen Harper's fault. And that's Dominic LeBlanc is so lacking in credibility. But I'll play as much of this as I can. This is a really good dissertation from conservative leader Pierre Poilievre yesterday, Sunday, talking about his vision for the border.
Trudeau is a weak leader who has lost control of spending, lost control of immigration, and lost control of our border. And don't take my word for it. Look at the facts. His own government admits there are as many as 500,000 people in Canada illegally. We know that seizures of fentanyl doses by U.S. Border Patrol at U.S.-Canada border have more than tripled between last year and this year. In 12 months to September 2024, 11,600 pounds of drugs have been seized by U.S. Border Patrol agents at the Canada-U.S. border. In 2024, U.S. border guards caught 10 times more people sneaking southward from Canada than in 2022. This is a problem that we expect will only get worse because we have 700,000 international students here now that Trudeau and his former immigration minister, Sean Fraser, hinted that they would be able to stay permanently. And now suddenly that message has reversed, and Trudeau and the NDP Liberal government say that their plan is to hope, with the honor system, that they will leave voluntarily. CSIS, and then there's the drugs. CSIS, I'm quoting now from a document obtained by Access to Information by Blacklock's reporter. This is a briefing note the Prime Minister received almost a year ago. CSIS identifies more than 350 organized crime groups actively involved in the domestic illegal fentanyl market. And what has Trudeau done since he got this information back in January, almost a year ago? Absolutely nothing other than try to legalize and liberalize these same drugs. He has weakened our borders, and he doesn't even inspect 99% of shipping containers that come into our country. Since Trudeau became Prime Minister, there's been a 632% increase in U.S. border control encounters with people illegally attempting to enter the United States from Canada. In the first 10 months of 2024 alone, U.S. Border Patrol has intercepted more than 21,000 people illegally crossing our border. And on top of that, doesn't include the dangers that are coming into Canada from the United States because of Trudeau's broken border. According to Toronto police, 82% of gun crime is done with American guns that Trudeau allows over our borders because of the weak inspection system and the drugs that come across the border, the existence of Roxham Road and other illegal border crossings that Justin Trudeau opened right after he put out a tweet to the entire world saying, "Welcome to Canada, come on in, we'll invite anybody across our borders." That chaos has persisted. It is clear that after 9 years, Trudeau is not worth the cost, the crime, the corruption, and the chaos. He has lost control of our border, lost control of immigration, lost control of our finances. And that is why today I am calling on the government to fix Trudeau's broken border. I'm demanding that the Trudeau government quickly present a Canada First plan to Parliament that includes increased patrols, working with provincial law enforcement, deploying new technology, cracking down on illegal drug production and trafficking, tightening visas, securing our ports, and expanding the mandate of CBSA officers to fix the broken border. These new technologies would include scanners, helicopters, towers, drones. We also proposed temporarily deputizing provincial law enforcement whose premiers wish to fill in the holes the Trudeau government has caused. This, of course, is I'm embarrassed that we even have to suggest this, but it would be a temporary measure to fix what Trudeau, or to patch up the holes that Trudeau has opened. We need a real crackdown on illegal drug production and trafficking by reversing, for example, the C5 changes that Trudeau brought in, which reduced penalties for production and trafficking of hard drugs. We need boots on the ground, scanners all around, and a stronger border. We need to expand the mandate of CBSA officers to enforce the law beyond border posts. The reality is that Trudeau has lost control of the deficit of immigration and of our border. In less than 2 months, President Trump will come into office. He has threatened the possibility of imposing tariffs unless there is action to address Trudeau's broken border. Since Trudeau became Prime Minister, there have been massive increases in illegal border activity. It is his job to immediately introduce action to solve it. Now, it's not just for Donald Trump. Frankly, we have to acknowledge that he is the new President of the United States of America, and we have to protect our economic interests, but we have to protect our own interests. It is unacceptable for Canadians to have 47,000 overdose deaths. It is unacceptable for Canadians to have 350 crime groups actively producing and shipping fentanyl. It is unacceptable for Canadians to have $100 billion of money laundering. It is unacceptable for Canadians to see a 200% increase in overdose deaths. Even if President Trump were not calling for this action, we should be doing it for our own country and for our own interests.
Yeah, I like that because it's Canada first equals America first. We can work together because we should have the same values. We should be working towards the same objective. Now, I said yesterday, and people have commented on this, is that why do you think the least damage Justin Trudeau did was from 2017 to 2021? It's because Donald Trump was president during those years, and he kept Justin Trudeau in check. That's what happened. Now, I don't think Justin Trudeau is going to be around for much of Donald Trump's presidency this time. But it's clear he's not even president yet, and he's already keeping this Liberal government in check. Let's listen to Public Safety Minister Dominic LeBlanc. Try to convince the CBC, and of course he would go to Rosemary Barton, wouldn't he, when he wants to grovel about how Trudeau is going to do whatever Donald Trump says because they don't want that 25% tariff, and they're prepared to do just about anything. So listen to this.
It was a warm sort of social evening as well. The president talked to us about Maralago, told stories about the election campaign. The prime minister and he discussed challenges around the world. The president asked a lot of questions of the prime minister about different world leaders or different circumstances around the world. So that was important. I think it was important to have an opportunity to meet some of his incoming cabinet secretaries. I was sitting at the table close to the incoming Commerce Secretary, who'll also be responsible for the U.S. Trade Representative function, Howard Lutnick. He and I spoke about tariffs and what they would mean to the economy. We spoke about the border. So it was a chance, I think, for the Prime Minister to talk to the President about the importance of the relationship. They talked about energy security. They talked about pipelines. They talked about different conflicts around the world, China, some of the challenges of China. But it was also to understand, as you noted, the threat of tariffs and some of the stuff that we're doing at the border now and additional measures that we're going to take.
Okay, and I have a few questions about that, but just so we're clear, you didn't get a commitment from the president-elect to not move forward with the tariffs. That's fair to say. That you didn't get that, but what did you get in terms of any reassurance about the idea of tariffs?
We got, I think, a mutual understanding of what they're concerned about in terms of border security. All of their concerns are shared by Canadians and by the Government of Canada. The President and his cabinet secretaries understood that. We talked about the challenge that fentanyl represents in Canada, and these are shared objectives. We talked about the security posture currently.
Do you believe any government would repeat the word challenge with such rapidity? Here he goes. Challenge, it's a challenge, it's a challenge, it's a challenge. I mean, I am so sick of hearing about these challenges because these are not just challenges, these are problems, big, big problems, which people like Dominic LeBlanc does not have any intention of fixing. And that is really the point. Here he is blathering on about how they're going to do it. Barton has got him here, actually, because he won't admit it. He's got no assurance from Donald Trump that this tariff's going to go down because Donald Trump doesn't trust the Trudeau government. He doesn't think Trudeau's serious. That's clearly what's going on
at the border that we believe to be effective. And we also discussed additional measures and visible measures.
He just said the border, which we believe to be effective. Did you hear that? If you hear one thing from Dominic LeBlanc, let's listen to this again.
These are shared objectives. We talked about the security posture currently at the border that we believe to be effective. And we also just
obviously Dominic LeBlanc hasn't gotten it. Neither is Justin Trudeau. Because what Donald Trump is saying is that the security at the border is not effective. And here's Dominic LeBlanc saying it is effective, even though he just told a Bloc Québécois MP last week in the House of Commons. In fact, he's told two Bloc MPs this, that if there's any problems with border security, it's Stephen Harper's fault because he cut security at the border. So Dominic LeBlanc is not getting it. And there's no two closer in the cabinet than Dominic LeBlanc and Justin Trudeau. These two have known each other for a long time. They're very close. Whatever Dominic LeBlanc is saying, and this is why Trudeau took him down to visit Donald Trump. Obviously, it's public security. He's concerned about the border, but he's also a very close friend of Justin Trudeau, and he wanted him to be there. Neither of them got it. I can assure you that. Pierre Poilievre gets it. And this is why, to go back to what we started the broadcast with, this is why you're seeing stories today about Pierre Poilievre was helped by the Indian government to get the leadership of the Conservative Party, which is absolute stupidity. If, like I say, you were there at the time, and I publicly endorsed Pierre Poilievre as the only viable candidate for the Conservative Party when I was a columnist at that time for the Western Standard. I thought it was the only thing we could do. A little more
additional measures and visible measures that we were going to put in place over the coming weeks. So, and we also established, Rosemary, a path, a personal series of rapports that I think will allow us to continue to make that case. Sure. Incoming Secretary Lutnick texted me the next morning and wants to get together again in the next few weeks to continue the conversation around the border. So that is very valuable, I think, in helping them understand the shared priorities that we have with their government.
So what is happening then with the border, Minister? This is your portfolio. This is your file. The Prime Minister apparently said at that meeting that he was going to increase helicopter patrol. How quickly are we going to see a change in the posture at the border? How much money are you going to put behind it? And will we see that in the fall economic statement?
So three questions. We, Rosemary, talked about a lot of the Canada-U.S. cooperation that currently exists. There are literally sections of the border where there are Canadian surveillance cameras and drone coverage, and then a certain sector 100 kilometers away is the American Customs and Border Patrol, and they share the images in real time. So there's such a deep integration currently in terms of border security. So we took stock of that, but we also told them, as we've said publicly, we told the Americans, we said publicly, we're going to look to procure, for example, additional drones, additional police helicopters. We're going to redeploy personnel. As much as a reassurance exercise, we believe that the border is secure. We believe.
Well, he said it again. If you've got this is why you have to listen to these interviews sometimes twice. He said it again. We believe the border is secure. No, it's not secure. And neither do the Americans believe it's secure. And that's what Dominic LeBlanc is not understanding and what Justin Trudeau is not understanding. And not only that, yeah, you can have all kinds of surveillance cameras. You can have all kinds of drones and helicopters. But if you're allowing people to cross the border illegally, like Justin Trudeau has done for the last 9 years, it means absolutely nothing. And Dominic LeBlanc knows that, but he's not saying that. He's not saying that.
That there has been a long history of effective cooperation between Canada and the United States. And it's a bilateral challenge. We're also concerned about guns. We talked about with the Americans about our concern about gun smuggling coming from the south towards the north. So these are all shared concerns that we agreed to continue to work on together. But it's important, I think, to show Canadians and the Americans that we're stepping up in a visible and muscular way. And that's
the other visible and muscular way. And of course, that's the line that was reported around the world yesterday. And that's, of course, it means absolutely nothing. Now, before we go, I want to get into some really positive news here because I didn't have a chance to get into this yesterday. Of course, who do you think Donald Trump has nominated as his FBI director? We've had 4 years of 8 years of FBI directors who have been disasters. He's finally found somebody who's going to do the job.
I just want to start first with you and just get your reaction to this news tonight.
Yeah, well, it's a terrible development for the men and women of the FBI and also for the nation that depends on a highly functioning, professional, independent.
Now, this is the meddling son of a bitch who had no right to be running the FBI, and he's got the gall to say Donald Trump doesn't have the right to appoint Kash Patel as his FBI director. And the terrible news for all of those FBI agents who have been working for the Democratic Party for the last 4 years. This incredible hypocrisy.
Federal Bureau of Investigation. The fact that Kash Patel is profoundly unqualified for this job is not even like a matter for debate. So I think what we should really be thinking about right now is what does this signal in terms of Donald Trump's intent for the FBI? The installation, or the nomination, I guess we should say at this point, of Kash Patel as FBI director can only possibly be a plan to disrupt, to dismantle, to distract the FBI, and to possibly use it as a tool for the president's political agenda.
What the hell has the FBI being used for under Joe Biden? The FBI has become weaponized, politicized by the Biden administration to go after the enemies and the opponents of Joe Biden. So what is he talking about? Donald Trump's going to do that to it? It's already been weaponized. Donald Trump's trying to bring it back to a law organization, a real police organization. And by the way, we have the same problem in Canada with the RCMP.
And, you know, as an organization, we know what that looks like. This country has been there before, right? The pre-Watergate FBI, the J. Edgar Hoover FBI, struck fear in the hearts of Americans across the spectrum of politicians, people in entertainment, people in the civil rights community, because the director operated at the direction of presidents to collect political intelligence and to utilize the legal authorities, the investigative authorities of the FBI to terrorize and intimidate Americans.
And what does he think the FBI has been doing under Joe Biden? Going after pro-life activists? Going after parents who attend school board meetings? That's what the FBI has been up to. Persecuting Donald Trump endlessly. Doing SWAT team attacks on people like Roger Stone. That's what the FBI has been up to. That's called terrorizing people, Andrew McCabe, you waste of space.
Federal prosecutor and a public defender who defended a lot of these types of cases What you need to show is whether or not the FBI and government agents were using undercover operatives and informants on the day of January 6th, because if you can show that, you know they've been out. Hang on. But the paperwork shows having run informants, that's a 6-month buildup. Minimum.
Right.
Minimum. It's not like they just dropped them into the Proud Boys and said, hey, go, don't disrupt, please. So once you prove that, then you defeat the insurrection narrative with the FBI's own documentation. Forget what the videotape shows.
Just for people who you can't see what's going on.
So you know what he's talking about here. This is Kash Patel saying the FBI were on the scene on January 6th, the so-called Insurrection Day. They incited the riots themselves. They were the ones encouraging people to riot because they wanted to go after Donald Trump supporters. That was the lesson of January 6th.
The reason why Kash just said hang on or whatever is because I started smirking and rolling my eyes. And what I meant to convey with that is, come on, we know they were involved.
No, look, I totally
clarify,
agree.
Though.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I know definitively. What I'm saying is a reasonable suspicion is that there were agents. There's a video showing a guy with an earpiece pulling people into the building. All right. Mm-hmm. You combine that with the evidence of Ray Epps, and it looks like you have a preponderance of evidence suggesting there may have been federal law enforcement involved in making that thing happen.
I'll get you beyond a reasonable doubt.
All
Two
right.
pieces of information. Ray Epps was on FBI's most wanted list one day, and the next day he was off of the FBI's most wanted list. There are only two ways that happens. You die, or your informant. Put that aside. Under congressional testimony, Jill Sanborn, who I used to work with, the head of the FBI Counterintelligence Division, in charge of all these investigations, testified under oath when Senator Cruz asked her, flat out, were there federal agents involved with January 6th? And she said, quote, Senator, I can't answer that at this time. Not if the answer was definitively no, having been a DOJ FBI guy myself, she would have gone there and said, nope, absolutely not. The reason she said I can't answer that is because of the same stonewalling they gave us during Russiagate with Christopher Steele, Halper, and everybody else. It's the same narrative, and I'm telling you they were there.
So you're saying that she said I can't answer that because the answer is yes, and that would compromise whatever their operation was.
Exactly.
So we've got Andrew McCabe, the former acting director of the FBI, saying, oh, God help us, Donald Trump's going to politicize the FBI. We've got Kash Patel talking here about how it's already been politicized by Joe Biden. The object here is to remove the politicization from the FBI, to get it back to a police force and not a secret police force. That's what it's become. It's become like the Gestapo. These are plainclothes secret police officers who go around spying on Americans, just like the CIA, but spying on Americans, and that's who they consider the enemy of the people. Why I think Kash Patel is an excellent choice for FBI director, because this could be a whole new beginning. Now, before we go here, I want to remind you about the merchandise store. Yes, you will get your merchandise delivered to your door. It just, once again, do not use a postal box number. Use a address, like the one on your front door and the one on your apartment. That is, and yes, thank you, producer. Phone number, include your phone number. Your merchandise will get there. And thank you so much for being interested in doing so. We had a lot of sales yesterday. We've had a lot of sales over the last few days. And I think that's extremely heartening. Now, we didn't do quite as well today, but I think, we're fighting back, and that is so good. And remember, when you see this story today, you're going to see this throughout the day. Trudeau is going to, I mark my words, question period today, when Pierre Poilievre stands up and asks Justin Trudeau, hey, what happened in Maralago? How'd your little trip go? Trudeau's going to come back with this. He's going to say, well, what about you? You received assistance from the Indian government to become leader of the Conservative Party Canada. That's what's going to happen today. Anyway, I've gone over time. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll be back again tomorrow with all the news you need to know so we can all continue to resolve to resist. Keep looking up.